Howdy folks, Darren Fonzseau here talking about workers' compensation, or labor and industries as we call it here in the state of Washington. Many folks know I've been trying to get this minimum federal oversight on the table that a lot of people have told us have needed for a long time now, even Senator Bernie Sanders. But now it's not only Senator Bernie Sanders, we've had these people come out and tell us about it. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. I'll try to put it up a little closer. What it is it's the Workers' Compensation Overview and Issues. It's a congressional congressional research service, which is a nonpartisan group of our Congress, nonpartisan group of smart folks that got together and they sent out this report for all our lawmakers to read from every political party. It doesn't even matter what political party they're from. So this is a great piece of paper for injured workers to share with their work comp adjusters. I shared it with my LNI here in the state of Washington, and they put it in the legal confidential file. So if you got a link to this, I would share it with your adjusters at this point and say, hey, what's up? Anyways, that's not the topic today. The topic is going to be, a lot of people are saying I am such an angry and rude injured worker. And with my cries and screams and angry outbursts for help from people who are not helping us or who should be, that's what this video is about today. Is basically Darren, you're so rude and crude that we refuse to help all the other injured workers with the needed minimum federal oversight. See, what's happening here is the liberal left wants to use me as an excuse to not step up to the plate and help all the other little injured workers out there. I like to phrase it like this: is that it's like I've come to them, an angry injured worker, angry injured slave, screaming out that hey, they're hurting me and my people, and they're saying back to me the whole, wait a minute there, boy, you're because you're so enraged and so angry and don't talk to us just the right way, we're not going to address the war or the slavery or the oppression to your people, because you're too rude and angry, dude. And that is a lame excuse from the liberal left not to step up to the plate now and help get this federal oversight on the table that even, like I say, Senator Bernie Sanders even told us we need, and so did Patty Murray and Tom Perez. So when I go as an injured worker to people like the Bernie-crats in my community and the Democrats and ask for this to happen, because Sanders told us about it back in 2015, and so did Senator Patty Murray from my state. And at that time, I tried to get Mike Sales to also try to help. Actually, a little bit, 2 years before that, a little earlier, I tried to get Senator or Representative Mike Sales in my community to help. And he did look into my claimant stuff, but he didn't. Him and Marilyn Chase didn't really want to talk about the needed minimum federal oversight. They didn't come out and really help. And all Mike Sells offered me at that time was that, gee, we would get you a state ombuds person for everybody, because we do have some for the self-insured folks, but all the rest of the injured workers don't have a state ombudsman, and that creates an inequality for all of us as a whole. If the civil rights unit would like to step up and represent us for that, that would be cool. But I don't know where I was still going with. Oh, that was Mike Sells. Yeah, Mike Sells said he could get me. He could try to get me a state ombudsman for all of us. But the Republicans were stopping that from happening back then. Well, just 2 years later, they had full control of the legislature here in the state of Washington, and they didn't give us a state ombudsman. And that's when this letter came out in 2015, where Sanders said we need the federal oversight, and so did Patty Murray, like I said. So I said, well, gee, the Democrats weren't helping me at all with this. I would go to the Green Party folks, and that's what I did, because all the Democrats and Rick Larson were all chasing me away. So I tried to go to a local meeting. I got the courage up to do it, and went to my local Green Party. And when I was there was like these managers from hospitals and other people that worked in the medical community were all at that meeting, and all of them were managers at these different places, and they all told me, well, no, nobody's getting hurt, and our injured workers are just fine, and nobody wanted to help. I even had Jill Stein's campaign aide at the time. I met him and Tyler Vege at one meeting, and neither one of them wanted to help. And so anyways, but when Sanders came out with this letter in 2015, and the Green Party hadn't helped me either. But then finally that letter came out. I thought, oh boy, this is great, because now I can go over to these Bernie-crats with the letter from Sanders, and I have that here too as well, because I've sent this all to my legislators here lately. But anyways, this is a copy of a letter from Senator Sanders and Patty Murray and Tom Perez and about 10 other people that had signed off on this thing. That we needed. So I had that letter to me with me back in 2015 when I went to see him, Jason Call, who was, or I didn't see him, we communicated online, who had become our local Democrat PCO, was like a precinct captain, and he told me, gee, Darren, I'm a Bernie-crat, and I'm in charge of the meeting now, and I'm going to try and help you get your voice heard, and then he, after a couple of weeks later, he came back and said, well, gee, Darren, we can't do much for you. I could try to get you a state ombudsman, though. We could try to work on doing that for you, and that's all he said. And then that's why I replied back to him, well, that's the same thing Mike Selza told me 2 years ago. Why can't you just put the federal oversight on the table? And then he said, oh, gee, you're threatening me, and blah, blah, blah. And that's the other thing they do. He's threatening. No, I'm calling you out on to get honest and truthful about harm to injured workers. But nonetheless, Jason Call at that point, basically jerked me off. And it was the same time that David Strider, who was running for U.S. Congress and tied in with the Bernie Kretz as well, wanted to, did put a blurb about us into his bio about injured workers and said he's an injured worker himself, but to push I-1600. And that's why he wanted to do it, not to put the minimum federal standards that Senator Sanders is the solution on the table that we said we need. And that was at the same time I was asking him Tyler Vege. Why wasn't he helping us? And I have a conversation where I have a phone call with Tyler Vege where he tells me to seek out alternative solutions to the minimum federal oversight that Senator Sanders told us we need from their endorsed Republican, Scott Stefani, however you say his name. So yeah, and then at one point, Jason even emails me and says, what are you talking about, Darren? There's no Republicans involved with any of this. Well, then why was Tyler Vege telling me to seek alternative solutions for injured workers from the minimum federal oversight that Senator Sanders said we need? Jason, call. And so anyways, Jason called, like I said, back then in 2015, said they could come up with an ombudsman. And now, here it is, almost 2020 or whatever now, or it is 2020, or in 2019, whatever, we got this report coming out saying that from the Congress, like I'm saying, that's saying the same thing everybody else is saying, that we need these minimum federal standards for injured workers. So it doesn't matter who's in office, who's president, who's coming and going, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what political party is in charge. For like 30 or 40 years, us injured workers have needed this. So blaming one side or the other is no longer a good excuse, because everybody from every party should have this on the table if they care about the injured workers of America and patients rights. So anyways, yeah, that was Jason, here it is, yeah, now 2020 or whatever, 2019 or whatever here, Jason Call responds back to me when I ask him on their Bernie Kratz website or whatever. I asked him hey, what's up, dude? What happened to the state ombudsman you promised me from back in 2015? Because now Jason Call is running for U.S. Congress. He's trying to replace the Rick Larson, whose help I've been Representative Rick Larson, whose help I've been trying to get for, and who has ignored me for over almost 8 years now. So anyways, Jason Call is going to be replacing him. So that's why I'm saying, Jason Call, if you're going to replace him, why can't you get honest about this? And that's why at one point Jason goes, well, I do support the federal oversight. I would put that on my platform. Well, Jason, it's been almost 3 years now. Why do I got it? Why are you going to put it in your platform only after I poked at you? And I'm not threatening you. I'm calling you out for not representing me as you claim to be representing the humans in your community. And if you aren't helping humans in your community, if you don't step up and realize that we need this federal minimum standards for injured workers on the table, along with Medicare for all, or any universal care plan that we have. We can fight for both. There's no reason we can't. To tell folks you can't is to leave the injured workers behind. And anyways, here is Jason Call's response back to me. one of his responses back to me, and I want to read it to you folks. It's Jason Call for comments back to me and his excuses for failing injured workers. Jason Call says to me, Darren Fonzseau, you are insane, and you are threatening me again. All you have is anger and hate, and you do not know how to work with anyone. I have never lied to you about anything. You expected me to drop everything else I was working on and take up your single cause. Sorry, Charlie. It doesn't work like that. You are unstable and you need help. And quite literally, everyone who interacts with you feels the same way. Of course I worked for I-1600's single payer in Washington State. That was my primary focus. And Medicare for All and whole Washington are still my primary objectives. You really need to chill the fuck out and realize that when all you have is name-calling, nobody is going to want to help you at all. Jason Call for U.S. Congress. See, let's take that apart a little bit there. Because that's the whole attitude I'm getting from Randi Rhodes, too, as an excuse for not helping. Thom Hartmann, the same excuse for not helping and stepping up and representing it. It's an arrogance on the left here. And for him to be that way, to say that he's putting his issue, Med for All, no matter how he can get it, if it's Medicare for All or I-1600 in one state, however he can get it, that is more important to him than the human lives that are being destroyed by broken state work comp systems across this nation. And it's throwing injured workers under the bus, and you don't want to help patients. You don't want to help us all if you leave some of us stranded and behind. And I'm not saying to add us to the Medicare for All bill. Senator Sanders' bill was right for excluding us in Section 801 of the bill. It excludes us injured workers because, yeah, we're not supposed to be part of that. We have our own little deal to the side here. And what we're saying is on that deal to the side, we need the minimum federal standards that Senator Sanders also told us we need on the table with any of our other social agendas. And to leave us behind and only want yours is intentfully harming us, and it's not helping us. And so, yeah, it's just frustrating me. Oh, and then when he says, well, and people can't work with you. Well, it's funny to me, as an injured worker who left the University of Washington Medical Center, where I worked at the bedside there for 5 years and 10 years in healthcare before that, at other hospitals here in our community, and 15 years in construction before that. But when I worked at the University of Washington, they actually gave me an Employee of the Month award out of like 3,000 workers that worked there, where my co-workers stated that they wanted to clone me. So when you say people don't want to work with me, Jason, maybe the reason I'm so angry and frustrated is because none of you ever truly wanted to work with me or the injured workers to start with to get our issue on the table with your other issues, even though one of the victims in our community, a person, the people who you all say you're going to listen to, who Tyler Vege says he's going to listen to, but the people of the Progressive Uphill Network, I've caught them out saying, well, gee, Tyler Vege and Gigi Ferguson and all the Bernie crats, we can't get honest about the war on injured workers or the need of minimum federal oversight because we fear it makes our candidates unelectable. But yet Tyler Vege has run like 3 times now. Gigi Ferguson has run a couple times, and a lot of your candidates keep running, yet you can't get honest about the need of minimum federal oversight, but yet you can keep fighting to get us this other stuff, which I do kind of I like. I like the Medicare for All. I do. I'm not saying not to put your shit on the table. You're telling us we can't have our shit on the table with your shit. And we figure out here, we learn why from a guy named David DiPaolo, who passed away now. But he left this report back from, what year did he do this? April 4th, 2016. So on April 24th, 2016, David DiPaolo, a work comp person from the work comp community, who was an author and a writer and started what is still around, the Kids Fund, the Kids Chance program, and Work Comp Central. And they're all still that's all still going, even though he's passed away now. But what he left us in this report about Colorado Care, and how it would affect injured workers and what it was all alike, he interviewed somebody from the business community, and I would like to read you what that guy from the business community says to us. His name is Tony I can't say his name. It's as bad as my name. Tony Gagliardi, Colorado State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business. So this is a guy from the business community telling us, told WorkComp Central, I don't think the general population even has a clue of what this would mean for workers' comp. Well, the general population has no idea what work comp even is in the first place. And that plays well into the hands of initiative proponents. Ballot initiatives work on the KISS theory. Why complicate this issue? So basically, if we push the single payer care in Colorado, and just a one-state fix, as it was here in 2016 when it was going through, this businessman is telling us right here, well, if we basically have our people scream louder for their initiative, then the injured workers cry for their minimum federal oversight. Nobody's going to be the wiser because the general population is clueless about workers' comp. And so as long as the proponents for Medicare for all scream louder than injured workers, then the injured workers will never get their stuff on the table, but yet the stuff that we might get cost shifted to even more so than we already are now, which is happening, and that's why the Sanders says we needed some minimum federal standards to stop that from happening, the cost shifting of America's injured workers, still is allowed to go on. So anyways, back to being rude. Why is one angry injured worker so rude? And him being so rude, even though he's proven his case to the work comp judge, the SSDI judge, and he's been trying to get his voice heard by his lawmakers, and his mental health therapist and doctors helped guide him through this process, which is hell for most injured workers. On Latino Legislative Day, the Pete Seymour mental health people, who are been my mental health students, still are. I still use them. But their management seems to side with Ortiz Self, Representative Ortiz Self, who also I've been seeking help from to get the word out about 400 injured farm workers needing help, who cried out in the Seattle Times. 400 other injured farm workers cried out and said we need this issue addressed as well. But yet nobody wanted to say that was happening, and we used Latino Legislative Day not to get my voice heard or how the harm that was done to my father-in-law, which he was Latino, and on Latino Legislative Day nobody wanted to bring up the harm and how the state, Sedgwick, and Walmart basically worked him to death instead of sending him home to die, when everybody knew that's what he needed to do, was go get his affairs in order after his on-the-job injury, angst, as some of his pre-existing diabetic conditions. So when people say I'm rude and I'm angry, and then you use that rudeness and that anger as an excuse to not step up to the plate and put the minimum federal oversight that I was told 4 or 5 years ago from everybody at the Democratic side we need on our table. And you come, but yet you make excuses to not put that on the table and tell us, gee, if we put that on our table, our people won't get voted in, and our people keep not getting voted in. And that's just frustrating. And yeah, so yeah, we scream out in rage and anger because we're not being helped. Our voices are not being heard. And then I can even put together a video that somebody else did. I forgot what their name is. I don't know who it was, but there's a video that is put together that very much has Howard Burkus and the other people that wrote the article of the demolition of workers' comp. In that whole video, it explains everything to us and why we need the minimum federal oversight. And so to make injured workers have to go through this frustration and angst only adds insult to injury. When I have my local PCO that I've been reaching out for, Jason Call, have this attitude, and apparently this was the same attitude he had in 2015 when I was trying to get him to put the Senator Sanders letter on the table. When he said, when he come back, well, no, we could only get you a state fix. Well, that's the whole problem, dude. We don't need a state fix. We need the federal fix that Senator Sanders told us I need. So when I go to the Sanders crowd, and Jason Call can't help me, he's a Bernie-crat, and Tyler Vege, who's the head honcho Bernie-crat in our state, basically, tells me to seek help from their endorsed Republican Scott Stefani. Of course I'm angry and I'm enraged. Not to mention being sent to jail for yelling at work comp judges a year and a half after the freaking fact. That was egregious, but that's a whole nother subject. And that's why I like to say when like these people say I'm threatening. No, if I'm threatening you, I would have went to jail for threatening you. I know what a threat is and what a threat is not. And so when I threaten you with facts, that's not threatening to harm you. That's threatening to expose you politically. That is not threatening to physically harm you in any way. And so to use, and that's what we have this other lady who runs Whole Washington. What's her name? Georgina Davenport, who could take time to even make a meme about me back in 2015 to say Darren's crazy, don't listen to him, and he's making threats. I have not made threats, and the threats I did make were to judges and doctors, people who had worked that I felt were harming me or working to destroy my life. That is what I did, and I paid my time for those crimes, and the SSDI departments. That was what it was. SSDI judges and work comp judges and doctors is why I went to jail for the harassment charges that I have done. So I know what a real threat is. And so when you try to label me and say I made threats 3 years ago, I went to jail for the threats I made against people who I actually made them against that could prove it, and that were that the cops would actually pursue a charge over. And if you could have made those charges stick, you would have, but you could never make them stick, because I didn't make direct threats. There's such a thing as a preacher standing on the corner saying that if you don't repent and change your sinning ways, those you sin upon might come back and sin upon you. And I'm not saying anything other than that. Basically, it's the same thing I am doing as an injured worker, screaming out in rage, as injured workers have done for 30 or 40 years now, but we get labeled nuts, crazy, and don't listen to him or her as they are screaming out in rage. And that's what the Dem Party, the liberal left at this point, is using as an excuse to not step up and help us injured workers, to use one injured worker to say, well, gee, you're so rude and you're so crude, we're not going to step and help you with what the United States Congress has told us your injured workers need, because you're too rude, Darren. See, we pick and choose our whistleblowers. Here in Washington State, we like everybody to focus on Hanford because they look at the feds instead of looking at our state work comp system that is failing a lot of people. 400 angry injured workers, 400 farm workers are also saying this besides me. So that's why it's frustrating when we say we can't put your issue on the table. Apparently, my issue is harming people, and that's another thing. Workers' comp, in one state study, I think it was Massachusetts, could trace 25% of their opioid-related deaths back to work comp cases. 25 of the SI opioid suicides could be traced back to work comp. So when you tell me my issue can't be on the table with your issue, and here's the other thing. I-1600 failed. You all stepped on me. I don't want to say anything rude. Y'all didn't want to help me. Y'all wanted your I-1600 up there, but we couldn't put the letter that Sanders said we needed. We couldn't put the federal oversight for us injured workers on the table. And then you lost on the I-1600, just like it lost in Colorado. And they tried it in Virginia. But anyways, you can try for it, whatever you want, but to not help the injured workers at the same time and intently chase us away. And when I hear this businessman tell me that you guys are all doing this because the general public is stupid and naive to how this might harm the injured worker, then this is... because and he tells people that and the American Bar Association also told us that if that had been done in Colorado, that the injured workers, the problem was that we would lose out on our voc services and our time lost. So it's It isn't just about getting medical care. That's just 1/3 of what we need. The other 2/3 are voc services and time loss. So when you say you're just going to get us care, that's all great. We already get care if you get your arm cut off. You're going to get sewed up. So like the problem is, and for us injured workers, is the guy in Alabama getting $35,000 for an arm, but I think they raised it a little bit now. But at the time of the report, it was $35,000 for an arm and $75,000 or $750,000 in Georgia, just the next state over. Those are inequalities that we need to address, that Medicare for all, even if we had it in a civil lining today, would not resolve those inequalities for the injured workers of America. That's why this is a failure of the liberal left to step up and help us, as I have begged. And yes, been enraged over the deal. And yet, they take that angst and that rage that I'm trying to get help from, and I take meds for, and like I say, sought out mental health from, and I'm still seeking mental health from CMAR. But yet, when, like I say, they had a Latino legislative day, and the people that run CMAR, the behavioral health manager of the whole thing, who I begged to speak up, and Ortiz Self, who I begged to speak up for the 400 injured farm workers, none of them did. And some of those farm workers were out there even with their signs yelling at L&I. So yeah, when you say injured workers are enraged, and they're enraged for a good reason, because we're being failed here. When we have our federal government and everybody, and even Sanders, tell us that Washington State is one of 33 states that was failing its injured workers, yet nobody wants to step up to the plate and fight for the federal oversight and be a shining example for all the other states to follow. What's wrong with following some minimum federal rules? We have a minimum federal wage. There's no reason injured workers shouldn't have some minimum federal standards that everybody has. Like say, we regulate spark plugs on a federal level, but how injured workers get treated, that's left up state to state, and having Medicare for all isn't going to resolve that issue for the injured workers. So when you tell us Medicare for all is going to solve your issue, that is a lie. And when you intently lie to us, and then have the progressive uphill media tell us, well, candidates can't get honest, like Rosa Calderon got honest when we called her out, and she told us exactly what we needed. Yet, we can't call out Kashmir Sawant, and we can't call out Pramila Jayapal with the same question of why aren't you supporting and standing up for the minimum federal oversight Senator Sanders told us we need. And why isn't he running his mouth too at this point? No. What this is you're closing the door on us injured workers. And it's just not cool. And yeah, to use me to my rudeness. Of course, I'm getting rude when I start out nice, and I've been nice for a long time now. Look at all these people I've questioned: Senator Sells, and Jason Call, and Tyler Vege. I have been begging nicely for help, and all you do is slam the door on me, like you say, call me crazy and unhinged, which I do admit I am that. But I became that way, and I've proven that, and it says it in my work comp pension rationale that he had a 10-pound back that they were trying to put into a 50-pound job, and he could have done a light-duty position, but you fucked up his head because you didn't want to give him the Band-Aid to fucking start with. Sorry, I was trying to exclude the explicitives because everybody... You cuss a little bit, and you're too rude, and you're too crude, and no one wants to help all the other slaves. Injured slaves, I should say. And it is all the slaves, because none of us is immune from being harmed or injured on the job. And so if we don't have these guidelines in place, it harms us all. Sunday morning sermon is what this is. But yeah, Darren's, you're so rude. We refuse to help all the other slaves. Because one injured slave is so rude, we're not going to step up and help all the others. Yeah, dude. That's not working, Randi Rhodes. That's not working, Jason Call. That's not working, whoever else there is. And now I do have some folks who do help to try to get our voices heard. You call them blog folks. And even though they kind of... They're getting me. They're starting to understand it. I think at first they wanted to just use me as a little, get a laugh out of it. But then they started listening and started understanding that he's correct. And they've even come out and said I'm correct about a lot of it. And so I have to give a big shout out to Yukon Blog. Those guys are getting our voices heard. They're not trying to stifle us or trying to shut us up or label us as crazy. Even though our system is making many of us crazy, and that's kind of what I've been trying to say here, so that we might want to get addressed instead of telling us to shoo, go away and don't listen to him. And that's what we had progressive David Strider's David Strider was a candidate. Like I said, he tried to basically stroke me along just to sell I-1600, and then after all that failed, his campaign manager Larry Elger of the Progressive Justice Network or something like that, he calls his little outfit. What is it? Oh, he makes a meme about me and tells people I have PTSD, which that is not my diagnosis. I know my diagnosis, and that PTSD has never been ready. I believe me. I've asked them why aren't you calling it that, and they have their little shit, and I don't know. That's beyond my comprehension. But PTSD is not one of them. OCD is one of them. And I have a few others, but I'm not going to tell everybody what all the other ones are. But PTSD is not one of them. And yes, I do take antipsychotics, and I take them religiously. So I'm complying with my mental health therapy, and that's why it pisses me off a little bit when I try to share some of these videos and the truth about what's happening and what's going on here with people like Jason Call. And he has the nerve to hit me back with that kind of response. When I've proven my facts here. I have the facts on my side. And so it's egregious that these people want to keep doing this. And it only adds even more insult to my injury personally, when the management from my CMR Health Clinic can side with my local representative Ortiz self and the governor Habib to try and spin the narrative on Latino Legislative Day, even though the work comp attorney they were going to have to show up, they ended up not showing up. That's a whole nother thing. But it's just, yeah. So why am I angry? Why am I enraged? Why am I rude? It comes and goes. I can't help it a lot. Like I say, I take some of the antipsychotics. But the reason I'm that way is because I was told a solution to a problem by Senator Sanders and Patty Murray in my state, that we needed this here, and in 2015, and everybody I have gone to, hat in hand, and begging for my people to be helped. And when you say my people, a lot of people also say, "What do you say my people?" Well, because my father, when I was a child, was put through 9 years of hell, of work comp hell, before he got his SSDI. And he'd been a logger and a truck driver for his whole life. And when he fell off a silo and it messed up his head, things got messed up, and he ended up having a cut off arm, but he wouldn't let him cut it off. But anyways, it's a whole nother story. Anyways, my father was harmed at it and put through hell through 9 years as my family and my parents struggled to survive, to support me and my family. I went to I can't remember, 13 schools in so many years. It's astronomical. It was like 16 schools in 11 years or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but nonetheless, it was a struggle that from 7 years old till I was like 15 years old that I watched my family and had to live through. And then 40 years later, they did the same thing to me. And then in that process, as they were putting me through 8 years of hell, my father-in-law had gotten injured on the job, and they basically worked him to death after his on-the-job injury. So I have therapists. When Jason Call calls me crazy and I'm unhinged and to seek help, I'm seeking help, Jason Call. And part of that is those people in the mental health profession say this is institutional and generational betrayal. Because I have been hit with it like 3 generations of males in my family, harmed by this system in this issue you apparently don't want to address. So if I'm unhinged and I'm enraged, and I say it's my people, it's because, yeah, at this point it is my people, because I have like thousands of people online that are injured workers who like me or not like me, that hear from me. I'm getting our voices heard, and that's why it's frustrating. I have one injured worker, she has a site, and she's tied in with the little Bernie crowds, and that's what's so frustrating. Comes out and tells me, well, you, because you're so rude, it ruins it for all the rest of us. Maybe I'm rude, and that's the only one reason I'm being heard by people like Randi Rhodes and Thom Hartmann. What are you doing to get us heard? And it's so frustrating to me when that injured worker does that, because her site says politically incorrect zone. Yet she went out of her way. I didn't even have nothing to do with her page. I was on one of our other friends' pages out there. That doesn't always like me either, but she tolerates me once in a while. Sharing a post about how I called out Randi Rhodes, and how Randi Rhodes' response back to me was basically the same as the same response we get from all the liberal left. That at first, her first email back was, oh yeah, this needs to be addressed, and then after a couple of emails later, she says, well, you don't get this. This doesn't get addressed because you're so rude. And yeah, so because the one angry injured worker trying to get them to hear us and do something for us is too loud and angry and rude, we're not going to do anything for the rest of the little slaves. That is who that thought process or that logic just doesn't compute for me. And I guess that's pretty much what I was trying to get at here today. That it's just frustrating when everybody can say, well, Darren, you're so rude and you're so crude. Yet why wouldn't I be when all the facts are on my side here? And especially when I hear that this businessman is saying that injured workers, no one knows about injured workers, and so no one's gonna see it even coming, because the general public is oblivious to how this would affect workers' comp. But yet everybody from even Randi Rhodes tells me, gee, Darren, universal health care is going to solve your injured workers' problem. Gee, Randi, no, it's not going to. And we were told that by the American Bar Association. So we're being deceived here by our own liberal left, as injured workers are crying out for their help. And they're trying to give us the alternative solution, and maybe we do want that solution, but that solution you got isn't helping us. And we're being told to go away with yours that makes us look unelectable, but yet you can chase this other stuff that you keep not getting elected for anyways. I mean, how many times are we going to keep running and not getting elected? It's just frustrating. And then, here I got clueless Tom. I forgot about Gigi Ferguson and Reverend Barber and Moral Mondays, who I've also been begging for help from. We have a garbage truck driver die on the job in America every day. Every day. Why isn't Reverend Barber talking about that? And Medicare for All isn't going to stop the inequality from state to state of what one might get paid if they're killed on the job. So it's not, and they run this thing called Moral Mondays, and I like to tell Reverend Barber and Gigi Ferguson, who run a Bernie crowd, who run for Congress here in my state as well, who I begged for help from back in 2015, when they all turned their backs on it, and saying, oh yeah, because it's just an angry injured worker. Maybe I'm the only one that still isn't on opiates. That's what you do. That's the MO, and it's the same thing the spousal abuse people do to their victims. And that's like this, Larry Brown from the union, like say, well, you got a pension there, and that makes up for all this hell that you've been through and everything. And partially it does, but I also like to say to him, to telling me to shh and be quiet is like like telling me, well, gee, you get an alimony check. Who cares that the spouse that abused you is now out there abusing a whole bunch of other people? We don't want to hear that. You're getting your little alimony check, so just be quiet. No. This is not right. This is not just, and this is not fair. And we were told a solution, and that's what is so aggravating. And I think it's maybe being done deliberately. You don't give people a solution and then don't put that answer on the table without thinking that that's not going to make them go unhinged and crazy, whatever. Definitely. If you don't think that doesn't make somebody go unhinged when you say, yeah, this is what we need, but when you go to the people that on the bottom and say, hey, Sanders told me I need this, and you all spit in our faces. And say, here, bud, we want to give you this, and it has nothing, no, it does not resolve the war for injured workers. Does nothing to stop it. Unless we lie and say, gee, we got hurt at home. And then, yeah, we'll get covered. And that's hoping the employers, that's not helping the injured workers or the workers as a whole. So this is very frustrating. Yes, Mr. Jason Call for Congress, he's supposed to take Senator Representative Rick Larson's place. If it ain't going to happen, but nonetheless, and you're no different than Representative Rick Larson. You're both one and the same if you can't step up and fight for the injured workers. Federal oversight that I've been begging of you people now for about 8 years, and many other people have been begging for it since 1972. So that's why it's so frustrating. And when you want to say they're angry, they're unhinged. Maybe they're that way because they've needed this federal oversight since 1972. But every time we go to the people who are supposed to be the ones that are help us, and that's why it irks me the most when Randi Rhodes and Jason for Congress will say, you bite the hand that feeds you. The hand that's supposed to be feeding me is only feeding me Medicare for all that does nothing for our injured workers. And is leaving our injured workers behind and spit in our faces when you won't let us put our stuff on the table with yours. It's almost like you got a sack of potatoes, but you're telling us to go away with our bag of garlic. And there's no reason we can't fight for everything to be on the table. I don't know if that made sense, that analogy, but we'll go with that. It's just too frustrating. And then where do we go? Oh yeah, okay, I covered all the bases I wanted to try and cover in that. So when you say you're so rude, we refuse to help the other slaves, that's not on me, folks. That's on the liberal left, who's refusing to stand up and then making excuses that, well, if we tell the truth, we won't get elected. Yet they keep not getting elected, and the truth is not getting told. That's not on me. That's on you people who refuse to step up and get honest. When we are being told by the United States Congress that we need some minimum federal oversight for the injured workers of America, and it doesn't matter what party you're from at this point. If you aren't stepping up and representing us with that, then you aren't representing the workers of America, and you stop telling us you are. And I don't care what party you're from, or the third parties as well. And that's going to be my Sunday morning sermon, I guess, for now. But still, I'll end with this, besides that I'm so rude. Well, if I'm so rude, I wouldn't be telling every other angry injured worker, and this doesn't matter what state you're in, where you're from, get a copy of this report, get a link to it. If you can communicate, if you can't communicate through the comm system, here in Washington we have a comm system, and I utilize that really well. But if you can't send, and I like I say, I sent this into my comm system, and they put it under the confidential legal file. So you may want to do the same thing if you're fighting a state work comp system. Send this in and make it part of your file. That's just a hint. That's not. Can't give out legal advice. I'm just a mere injured worker. But if I was an injured worker fighting work comp in America today, at this point, get a copy of this, whether you agree with the report or not. Send that in, and you might see some people start changing their tunes in your work comp claim. Just a suggestion. And as far as the rudeness and the crudeness and anger, I seek help for that. And that's why it's frustrating when my own liberal Democrats say, well, go get some help. Go get some help. I'm getting all the help that there is available. And it's still, you can't, there is no pill for systemic oppression or systemic patient abuse and codified patient abuse that nobody wants to step up with some federal oversight to help get addressed. And if people are going off, or injured workers are going off in our communities, it may be because people aren't stepping up and addressing us. Others are probably, I'm a pacifist, but others aren't. And if they're being rude and crude and going off or unhinged, as Jason Call for Congress wants to call it, you might want to address the reason, the root cause for which those injured workers are becoming unhinged. Just saying. Have a good day. Oh. I was going to play the song, Why You Gotta Be So Rude. I like that song. Sometimes when they silence you systemically, and they silence you legislatively, uh, judicially, and economically, you have to scream out. And I'm sorry if that offends some of you. But if the rest of us aren't stepping up and saying something, as we have proof and facts of harm happening to humans, so that corporations can profit and people can compete for state work comp rates and a race to the bottom for the people who produce and labor for us, then, and let's take it one step further there before I close out here. This isn't only harming injured workers. This harms our employers as well, and even the smaller employers. Because we are being forced to buy a product here in the state of Washington. Our employers and us pay for it, and it doesn't really matter if you do or not. We're buying a product that when we go to have it made good on, people are not making good on that product for which we are forced to buy. And it harms employers lose good workers. And it needs to be addressed. And clearly, when the United States, if the United States Congress is telling us this needs to be done, then I rest my case. To me, I think for injured workers and our fight for, as people say, our government's not functional and both sides, la 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 la. This is both sides right here coming together. The smart people from that group, being impartial and non-political, whatever you want to call it, non-partisan, they have come together. And what they have decided, after the facts have been all mulled over, is that injured workers of America need this minimum federal oversight. That many of us have, yes, been going crazy and unhinged, trying to get our own liberal left to step up to the plate so that we can go fight people like Governor Jim Justice. Yeah, I think he's from like Virginia, North Virginia. I don't know where he's from, but Governor Jim Justice needs to fight for workers. Because that's what our United States Congress is telling us, Jim Justice and his pals on the other side. But see, I got to scream and yell at my side to wake them up so we can go fight the other side. Randi Rhodes, Jason Call, Thom Hartmann, who else we got? And my union blog, my what are they? UCOM blog, Labor Radio. They are getting my voices here. Sometimes they, maybe not believe everything I say or whatever, and I am unhinged, as Jason Call would say. That's what my pension rationale says. I'm unhinged. I'm not saying I'm not unhinged. I do seek treatment and do what I'm supposed to do, and that's why it is really frustrating when Jason Call in my community says he's fighting for people here. Wants to pull the mental health card on me here. I'm using the mental health card, and I showed these same videos to my mental health team, and they have told me, rock on, Darren. You're not getting your voice heard, and you're trying to be heard where others are closing you out. Do what you can do. Keep the good fight the way you're doing it. But yet some people are saying, because Randi Rhodes are hearing me, and Thom Hartmann's hearing me, and UCOM's hearing me, and it's yet loud and enraged. And that's another thing with UCOM blog. I did yell at them, and I sent them a real long, ripping one. That's how we met. That's how I make friends. But anyways, they were able to take pieces of that long rant I had being so enraged about journalists on the left failing to step up and represent us with the federal oversight, and break it down into little blurbs to use as cameo little appearances in their as their show plays out, because they like to push little things, bitch. I forget what the other one. Get that shit on the table. They took little bits and pieces of my ranting and raging, and instead of telling me to go away, injured worker, are using that rage to in a positive way to try and bring attention to the war on injured workers and labor in our country. So instead of telling me Randi Rhodes and Jason Call and Thom Hartmann type folks to go away and we don't help your people because you're so rude and angry, why can't you be like you come blog and gosh dang it, I'm forgetting his name right now. Chris LaGrange. Be like Chris LaGrange. He's getting our voices heard. He's not cutting us out. That's what we need in this country. That's what the unions need. Our unions need to wake up too. I'm for the unions, but we gotta wake them up. And if they won't help us, then there's a problem with that. And that's what we need to call out and wake people up, and not label them crazy and enraged when they come to you with basically a bill in hand almost, and a resolution. That was something my Democrats here for a long time told me, gee, Darren, we need a resolution from you. We need a resolution. Well, I put together a nice little resolution that for what's his name? Gosh dang it. Anyway, for one of my local senators here, I put it together and sent it back to him. A resolution that included the 2009, what that was, a 2009 BACA, a bill for workers' comp, about putting this federal oversight on the table back then. So I incorporated that to them, and I sent the resolution to them, and a nice, tight, neat little package for them to try and get the stuff addressed, and they just laugh at it. So if I'm enraged and I'm rude and I'm crude, maybe it's because the people here in the Northwest in this political revolution, and my own Democrats like Ortiz Self and Marilyn Chase, and even who's the Marco Ilias, who started out this whole thing with me, about 8 years ago, or back in at least 2015, around there. He'd made a video saying that work comp's not broken, everything's fine. And I have been calling him out ever since. And instead of calling him out on this issue, our people promote him to be like the leader of our party. There's something wrong with that. And when Tyler Vege and uphill media people out of Portland tell me, well, people like Tyler Vege are going to do what the people tell them to do. Yet, here's an angry, injured worker that you are calling unhinged, telling you what's wrong with him and what he needs. Senator Sanders tells him needs to be done. But Tyler Vege, the leader of the Bernie Crats in my state, can't put that on the table. You got to ask yourselves why people are going unhinged, and are you doing this deliberately so people will go unhinged, so that you can then say, well, gee, we need some more mental health and we need some more gun control. But yet we don't want to address a root cause of a broken state work comp system. I'll leave it at that for today. That's my Sunday morning sermon. I'm telling you, if you're an injured worker, please go online. I'll try to put a link on the video when I put it up here to this. And get a copy of this. And send a copy of it to your lawyer. And send a copy of it to your adjuster. You say, what's up? Is this why you're delaying me? That's just some simple advice. Not legal advice. Just a simple suggestion from one other injured worker to the other injured workers of America. Share that with folks in your claim, in your case, and say, what's up? Have a good day. Happy Sunday. And happy holidays, too, by the way. From that rude, angry, injured worker.